Welcome to the Pindown, your Detroit Pistons podcast. I'm your host, Wes Davenport from Motor City Hoops and Detroit Bad Boys.
And I'm Blake Silverman, writer for Detroit Bad Boys, covering everything Pistons, and news writer for Sports Illustrated.
And guys, we are coming to, honestly, couldn't be a better time. Imagine if we were trying to record, yesterday morning or something. But here we are on a Saturday early in the afternoon, right after the beating that the Pistons just gave to the New York Knicks. Obviously, quickly here after the trade deadline, so we can get our instant reactions on those as well, especially from our guy Blake. But before we dive into any of that, I want to make a very quick correction. All right, so in the instant reaction podcast that I did right after the Jaden Ivey for Kevin Huerter deal essentially went through, I had misexplained how that pick swap works. All right. So what I had said was it was essentially like the Pistons were going to get kind of an extra late first round pick, which is great, but it's not super exciting. It's not quite that. So in reality, this is a pure swap. What had tripped me up was the Utah element of this all. So because of that previous Gobert trade, if the pick from Minnesota is 1 through 19, the pick just goes to Utah. Okay. But if it's between 20 and 30, the Wolves agreed to a pick swap. So what that means is the better pick is going to go to Detroit. The lesser pick is going to go to the Wolves. For example, if the Pistons are 28th and the Wolves are, say, 22nd, well, then the Pistons get the Wolves pick, the Wolves get the Pistons pick. It's just a swap. You don't get two. But if we flip that around, right, let's say that the Wolves have a fantastic finish to the year. They finish with a better at a better end of season position than Detroit. Then Detroit just keeps the pick, and so do the Wolves. And there's no swap that's being done there. So it's not an extra pick. It's just a pick swap, and only under the condition that the Wolves are worse than Detroit. But with that said, Blake, we've not gotten your reactions to that deal. So that was Kevin Huerter, Dario Saric, and the aforementioned pick swap in its exchange essentially for Jaden Ivey from Detroit's perspective. So what were your initial reactions when you saw that come, when that news kind of broke? And then, as you've had now some time to think about it, dive into Kevin Huerter and the player that he is and what he might bring. What do you think about the deal overall for Detroit here?
Yeah, especially with the acquisition of Kevin Huerter, I think the Bulls were a team I was looking at in the deadline that might be just trying to ship their expiring contracts for whatever they can get. And we saw them do that and then some and get a whole ton of guards. So I thought that Chicago was a team that had some players that could help the Pistons. Honestly, I would have loved if the Pistons could have got Ayo Dosunmu, but I think Kevin Huerter is a good deadline add. We've already seen a couple games of him with the Pistons. Obviously, he hasn't gotten many minutes yet. Probably just like a little bit of a rocky start, especially shooting from three, but that's okay. It's still deadline week. We have a lot to go, but just like going into Kevin Huerter a little bit, I've liked his game for a while, obviously known for his shooting ability. That's something that we've talked about at length that we hope the Pistons would address at the deadline. Doing so with Kevin Huerter, I think it was a good option, and they got him for a cheaper price point. Just when you consider like what the potential market was for Jaden Ivey, especially with the Pistons getting that pick swap back, which could come to fruition. It could be null and void, but I think that's a sneaky piece in the trade. Like if the Pistons get to move up 5 spots in the first round of the draft, I think that's a win as well. But I do really think Kevin Huerter especially can help this team down the stretch. We'll see what happens with Dario Saric. I'm not convinced we'll ever see him play for the Pistons, but just what the deal needed. But obviously the bigger story with it is Jaden Ivey. I think we've talked about his future, his return from injury just for so long, and it just seemed like it was headed to this direction where a change of scenery was needed for him and probably needed for the Pistons as well, especially with what Kyle Metz brought up on the show last week with his large cap hold over the offseason. It sort of made sense for the Pistons to deal him now. I think it's a good opportunity for Jaden Ivey to just prove himself ahead of restricted free agency. I mean, he's already played a game for Chicago. He started, had 13 points, made 3 threes, 6 assists, 4 rebounds. So he had a nice game, and I'm rooting for him in Chicago. It's definitely a bummer that it just didn't work out for him in Detroit, but I'm still convinced he can be an impactful NBA player in the long term. I wish that was with the Pistons. It just seems that it's not where the franchise is at right now when Jalen Duren's in line for a new contract. Isaiah Stewart can get an extension as well. And then you have Ausar Thompson and Ron Holland coming up, and we'll see what happens there. So gonna miss Jaden Ivey. Really wish the injuries didn't derail everything, but I'm excited for him to have a little more free range in Chicago to be competing and be able to make an impact on a team that is just going in a different direction this year. And I think he can prove himself, whether it's remaining with the Bulls long term or having another team take a shot on him and set in free agency.
Yeah, and with that deal, right? So Sean Haddix asks in our live chat, why couldn't we get Kobe White instead of Kevin Huerter? I mean, I'm sure they asked, right? I can't imagine that they were having those trade conversations and then didn't ask for the better player in exchange for Jaden Ivey. I'm sure the sticking point was all those second-round picks that the Hornets, right, gave up in exchange to get Kobe White. But what's interesting, I think, really with Huerter, and I'd love your reaction to, is just the type of player that he is, the archetype of player that he is, because he comes in with this reputation of being a gunner. He comes up with this reputation of being a guy that's just a real sharp shooter, and that goes all the way back to his days in college. But when he started expanding his game in Atlanta, it seems like that's more of the direction he's been, kind of more of the path that he's been on for a number of years now. So you look at the 3-point numbers. I brought this up before. In Atlanta, it was 38% from 3 on 5.5 attempts per game over 274 games. So that's really good, right? But then he leaves Atlanta, he goes to the Kings, 40%, the following year 36%, and then the next year he gets traded midway through the season. He finished that year at 34%, and so far this season at 31%. So, 3-point percentage has been going down. However, during this entire time period, he's been a very good, according to Synergy, pick and roll ball handler. He's been a very good transition player. So this is a guy that can do a lot more than just spot up, catch and shoot. He's a good 2-point dribble jumper guy. He's a good finisher around the rim. Honestly, he gives you a lot of the similar output, similar things that Ivy does. Right now, Ivy looks like a better shooter. So I'm just a little kind of interested in your perspective on Huerter in particular, like the guy that they're getting and adding here.
Yeah, and first have to shout out Derek Brown for the super chat. I think that's the first one of those we've got. Very unnecessary, but we truly appreciate your support and always joining in with us.
Thank you, DB.
Thank you so much. But yeah, with Huerter, I think it is obviously on the surface, he is known as a shooter, but like you said, he has a lot more elements to his game. And I think especially with how we've seen JB Bickerstaff and even before JB Bickerstaff, the Pistons want to play in general is okay, you have a guy that's going to help you space the floor, but that's not going to be his only job. We saw the same thing with Malik Beasley last year. I feel like it's it wasn't a Trajan Langdon acquisition, but it's sort of similar to what the Pistons did when they brought in Simone Fontecchio, brought him in for the shooting, but he can do a little bit more as well. So I think it just helps the team be a little bit more fluid and will hopefully ease Kevin Huerter's transition to a new team. He's been traded before. He's not new to this. I'm not, even after 2 games where he's not really getting a full minute load yet. That's not a concern by any means, but I think he can be one of those players that surprises us with what else he can do aside from 3-point shooting, like we saw in the past when we brought in Malik Beasley, especially, and also players like back to Fontecchio and along those lines. So I think it's it just seems like a Pistons trade. That's not great analysis by any means, but I think he'll fit in well. And obviously the shooting will be a big story. Hopefully he can get those numbers up compared to what he was shooting at with Chicago earlier in this year. But with the track record he's had over his career, he actually shot the ball much better when he was traded to the Bulls last season compared to the start of his season with the Kings. So I think they can go up from there. And yeah, like you said, Jaden Ivey has been a pretty good catch and shoot guy. I felt like he was sort of turning into a little bit of that for the Pistons, but we know that he has a lot more to his game as well. And I think it was just an understanding of like, that's great. That's something that this team needs. But with the cap hold and restricted free agency and everything, it's not something that the front office was willing to commit to. So maybe just bring in a player. Also help Jaden Ivey maybe was a little bit of it, but also bring in a player that can help you down the stretch, and then potentially a draft asset if they can move up as many as 8 spots in the draft, depending on how the standings shake out.
All right, real quick shout out to our guy Camille, who came in with another super chat. We will definitely tell Kyle Metz you said hi. Thank you. Super appreciated. This is just food for thought, guys, and then we're going to move on and talk about the whooping that the Pistons just put on the Knicks, because we have to. It's too fun. It's too good. But so Jaden Ivey, and what I think most of us would probably agree was his best season last year, right? So when he was healthy during that stretch, he shot 64% at the rim. So far this year, Kevin Huerter is shooting 80% at the rim on similar number of field goal attempts as well. 3 to 10 feet, Jaden Ivey last year, 43%. Kevin Huerter this year, 46%. Jaden Ivey last season in close mid-range, 10 to 16 feet. He was 33%. This year, 10 to 16 feet, Kevin Huerter is 65% from that distance. And then 16 feet to three-point range, so our true mid-range jump shots. Jaden Ivey last season, 33%. Kevin Huerter so far this season, it's finally worse. It is 20%, but he's only 1 for 5, so he doesn't take a lot in that range. Point is, Kevin Huerter, believe it or not, profiles as a better finisher and inside the arc scorer than Jaden Ivey did last season at his like peak of Piston success, which is just an interesting note, especially with the fact that Jaden Ivey that season and so far this year also shot better from 3. So there's a bit of a trade-off there, but something to keep in mind as we kind of continue to see Kevin Huerter get worked into this rotation more as the season progresses. All right, Blake, how about that Knicks game?
That was fun. I mean, we were talking about it for a second before we went on air, and it was just like Cade Cunningham gets in foul trouble. He still had a good game. You don't have Jalen Duren, and the Pistons just put an absolute beat down on the New York Knicks, they've had their struggles over this season, but they're still one of the top teams in the East. They want to contend for the title. They made some moves like bringing in Jose Alvarado to help them in the postseason. And like, I know they didn't have Alvarado yet. OG Anunoby was out. Josh Hart gets hurt during the game, but the Pistons were basically, Cade played just 22 minutes. He basically got to take a night off because of how big a blowout it was. And then just shout out to Dennis Jenkins, who has 18 points off the bench. He's talking that trash to the Knicks and everything. And I know Trajan Langdon said in his post-deadline presser that the plan is to get him converted to a full NBA deal over the weekend. But what a show for him to put on in his last available game on the two-way deal. I know the Pistons kept him out while they were figuring out that situation, but I think a little, and we're talking, there's some Kobe White chatter in the chat. Like, Kobe White's a great player, and I've been interested in the Pistons going to get him for a while. But if they did get him instead of Kevin Huerter, like, what would that mean for Dennis Jenkins? It certainly would impact his role to some degree. not saying that that's why you don't go and trade for Kobe White, but Jenkins has just been awesome after that awesome start to the year, had some up and down, but to see him pull out that game just in his last available before the two-way requirement was up was awesome. I'm excited to hear the official news of him getting converted to a full NBA contract because it's just incredibly well-deserved. I saw former Pistons beat writer James Edwards was talking on Twitter last night saying how he thinks Dennis Jenkins might be the best two-way player in NBA history. And I was like, yeah, I kind of agree
Austin
with
Reeves
that.
would like a word, right?
Austin Reeves,
wasn't he a two-way? Yeah,
definitely recency bias, but I think Dennis definitely has his name in the conversation just for how big a part of this team he's been. That's leading the Eastern Conference with 30 games to go.
And we're going to talk about the Dennis Jenkins contract here in a second because I think it's a good and honestly pretty exciting conversation. But first, I just want to throw some stats out here. So the Pistons and Knicks, they both shot almost the exact same number of field goal attempts. Knicks 82, Pistons 83. Pistons shot 53%, the Knicks 35%. The Pistons outshot the Knicks from three, both in terms of makes and volume. The Knicks were 8 for 33. The Pistons 17 of 14. The Knicks got to the free throw line more than the Pistons did. It didn't matter because the Pistons out-rebounded them by 9. They had 9 more assists than the Knicks, 1 fewer turnover. The Pistons had 16 stocks in this game. The Knicks 7. I mean, this was as dominant a win I think as you could see, and I'm even remembering the Nets record-setting blowout. I know what that was, but this is different. The Knicks are good. I get that Cat was out, but so was Duren. Josh Hart, and all due respect, he came out in the third quarter. That game was over by that point. I'll give him OG wasn't there, but okay, we'll give OG his 17 points per game back that he does this season. All right, fine, they lose by 20 instead of 30. Great, whatever. This was incredible. You look up and down that Knicks roster, like Jalen Brunson played 31 minutes. He made 4 shots. 4 shots. Ausar Thompson just had him in hell.
Yeah, we have to shout out Ausar Thompson because he didn't contribute really anything offensively, but Jalen Brunson, if you look at his box score, like that tells you everything you need to know about the type of game Ausar Thompson had. And 3 blocks, 2 steals, and one of those chase down blocks that went off his forearm. I mean, awesome game from him, even though he only took 3 shots and scored 2 points. He showed the game on Prime. Some people in the chat were saying there were some connection issues, which I had as well, but a national audience and just locking down one of the star players in this league like that, I felt really made a statement.
Oh yeah, it did. I mean, Ausar Thompson was a assassin out there. He was a hired gun, and his only job was to stop Jalen. He took 3 shots. Ausar Thompson took 3 shots. He made 1 of them. He played 24 minutes, but he blocked as many shots as he took. That was the Ausar Thompson night. 3 blocks, 2 steals, 1 turnover, plus 11. I mean, I'm going to throw the single game plus minus in there just to continue gassing him up here. Incredible game from him. I thought Isaiah Stewart played really well in what's just frankly a tough matchup for him. He's given up so much size to Mitchell Robinson, and you couldn't tell. You couldn't tell at all. Stewart played huge. He had 15 points, 6 of 7 from the floor, 1 of 2 from 3 rebounds. He had a steal, no blocks, but I thought he was impactful, changing shots around the rim. I'm trying to think of other really standout players, Blake, that we need to specifically shout out here other than Dennis, Ausar, and Stu. And
I got one.
Everyone played so good.
Yeah, I got another one we haven't talked about. The Pistons beat the Knicks so bad that Javonte Green had his son on his lap eating Fritos with 5 minutes to go left in the game. And I saw Javonte Green.
So awesome.
Yeah. I saw Javonte Green getting some love too for his time out. I feel like we talk about so much just about type of players that are, even if they're not on the Pistons, like they feel like Pistons. And Javonte Green, he's been an NBA guy for a while. We knew who he was, but I'd say the majority of Pistons fans weren't fully familiar with Javonte Green's game. And he's just been one of the perfect Pistons last night on the floor and making 2 threes. And yeah, I just thought it was awesome how his son was eating Fritos on the bench, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, just to like revel in this for just another quick second here, like Chaz Lanier was fantastic in 6 minutes. Chaz Lanier hasn't played in I don't know how long. Well, probably since the Nets game. But other than that, like, when's the last time Chaz Lanier really got minutes? He had 7 points, made a 3, looked comfortable. Like, that was great to see. I mean, Kevin Huerter looked way too good for garbage time. Paul Reed, you're right. Paul Reed. Someone in the chat brought that up too. Richard in the live chat brought up Paul Reed. 27 minutes for B-Ball, 12 points, 6 rebounds, 4 assists, and 2 stocks.
And some just energy plays like we've seen from him for a while. But I know it's sometimes to a fault, but I just love how confident he is. And when he makes a 3, like I feel like it's just an energy shift, or gets on the offensive glass and gets a dunk. Like he had a couple of those plays last night, and he's just like a great energy guy to have that can shift momentum, especially when your all-star big man is out for the night.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was really interesting in the first half when Paul Reed first checked in. Mitchell Robinson really went at him, thought that he had a big advantage there. And what does Paul Reed do? Immediately goes and gets an and one after an offensive rebound. Like, you know, it felt the same way with like Dennis Jenkins. And I get it a little bit with Dennis, right? When Dennis checks in, the Knicks, I can't really remember how much Dennis played in that first meeting with these two teams, but you know, Paul Reed played a bunch in the playoffs against the Knicks. They shouldn't have been shocked. But Dennis Jenkins, when he first checked in, they try to pressure him backcourt. He just runs all the way up, gets an and one on the other end too, like no problem. And that's a tone setter as well. I was a little surprised out of the Knicks for that one. But regardless, like there's not a single person who did not play well in this game. Even Marcus Sasser, who didn't score points in 10 minutes, I thought he moved the ball pretty well. He was getting point guard minutes, ran the show. I thought he got Chaz Lanier a couple of nice open looks late. So even him, like, yeah, sure, he didn't shoot it amazing, but nice night, right? Nice game out of Marcus Sasser. Noteworthy that Dennis Jenkins has elevated above the... Sorry, I have a Ring doorbell. So, okay, we just installed a brand new front door, and I've got this old Ring doorbell here, guys, and I disconnected it from our like house system because, well, it doesn't fit on the door anymore. But it made a noise. I don't know. I need to figure that. Sorry about that. That's fine.
Oh, no.
What was I even saying, Blake? I was confused by that sound too. It threw me off.
Yeah, I was listening to the doorbell, honestly. I don't remember.
It was a magical noise, you know, a little effervescence to it. Yeah, for sure. Well, we'll just keep going on then. Let's get to some of the questions. I want to start with Dennis Jenkins. We got a few of these. So talking about like what his next contract's going to look like. Well, not immediate next, but over this offseason, what his contract's going to look like, because they're certainly going to extend him, so that veteran minimum. So here's Pistons fan 11 says next year we can definitely get Jenkins under the mid-level exception, or can we actually get him under the mid-level exception and no one's going to pay him more? Also asked about maybe Malik Beasley being an issue with that. With Jenkins, mentioned, is he an unrestricted free agent? That's Pistons fan 11 again. And then Sharon Dalton asking what kind of contract do we think Dennis Jenkins going to get? So obviously, Langdon's been clear about this. He's going to get converted to a standard deal. So that's not a question. Dennis Jenkins is going to be on the roster here the rest of this season. When we get to the offseason, what's the situation there, right? Are you thinking that the mid-level exception is going to be enough? Are they going to have to go a little bit over that? I do know that they have early bird rights on Dennis Jenkins, so they can go a bit over the cap. I don't think that that's as extensive as the bird rights, the actual bird rights actually are. but I know that they have those. So I think that there's some amount of raise they can get him based on that. Similar to the discussion we were having last offseason with Malik Beasley when we were looking at his contract, and we were saying, well, you could sign him with the early bird rights. That'd only be like a $4 million raise. So he's probably going to want the mid-level exception, right? I think that Danis is in the same boat. But if you've got any more information on that too, by all means.
Well, the Pistons are probably going to have the non-taxpayer mid-level exception next year like they did this year. And next year that's slated to be like 15.1 million. My initial reaction is like, I feel like that should be more than enough. I mean, if you want to go across the league and look at sort of what other late draft picks or undrafted guys have got, I mean, Austin Reeves is a totally different story, but like Andrew Nembhard got 3 years, 58.5 million from the Pacers. So that's above the mid-level exception. But I think Andrew Nembhard is a more proven player than Jenkins is right now. And we still have some of the season and the playoffs to go. So it could be a similar situation once we're in the off season and Danis wants a new contract. But as we currently stand right now, I sort of just feel like that mid-level might even be too much. A lot of things can change. So in terms of like a contract, I sort of hope the Pistons can get him for around 10 or 10 to 12, maybe even a little bit less if possible. So something like a 3-year, $30 to $35 million deal that might be a little short and advantageous for the Pistons. But I'm thinking you could even do like a 3-year deal, put a player option on the end of it, just so there's a little bit of an incentive for Jenkins. Like if he continues to do what he's doing and prove he's going to be a high impact, like backup guard for a decade, then he can get a bigger payday 2 years from now. But yeah, my initial gut reaction tells me like 15 million right now might even be just too much.
Yeah, so Michael says in the chat that he thinks that the Pistons can pay him up to $12 million with the early bird extension. And, you know, now that I'm thinking about it, that does ring a bell from when we just had Kyle on. So we'll double check with him when we're telling Kyle that Camille said hi. That's what we'll do. We'll double check in on that one. But I do think that 12 million number is about right. So honestly, like, yeah, if you could get Danis on like a 3 for 30 or a 3 for 36, I think that's a win, whether you want to put an option on the final year of that or not. What would be interesting with that is I don't believe that you would need to use that mid-level exception in order to do it, right? You can go over the cap with bird rights to sign a player that you have control over. So if the Pistons were to do that, they would still have that mid-level exception with which to work, which I think would be solid for them to do. This whole thing, it's such a good problem to have, though, right? Like, this is, as Pistons fans, this is what we've been dreaming of for years. The Pistons were able to get an undrafted guy in-house, develop him, help him along the way, and now he's a really impactful player for a successful Pistons team. I love Danis Jenkins. I think we've talked about it at length, right? Like, that guy's just a Piston. Right? He's just got that vibe about him. He plays like the Pistons want to play. So I think with success stories like that, you know, you got to do everything in your power to keep them around. And 3 for 30, 3 for 36, somewhere in that range, that seems really, really fair for the type of player that he is. And you just slot him in as that backup point guard moving forward. I think he's proving, and I have faith that he's going to continue to prove that that's the type of player that he is, right? And he can back up Cade. He can play next to Cade with how well he can shoot the ball. He's a solid defender. He puts in a lot of effort on that end, which is great for the backup spot. Yeah, I think it's an exciting situation for Detroit, and what a wonderful spot to be in, right?
Yeah, and Harry, our guy Slam McClock, mentioned that Keith Smith suggested Danis could get a contract similar to AJ Mitchell or Cam Spencer. Cam Spencer's deal was 4 years for like $10.5 million. AJ Mitchell's was 3 years for 8.7. I think Jenkins.
That's average annual value, not total, right?
No, it's total. Like
that's
they're
total.
They're both like.
I don't know about that.
Yeah, so like I think when Danis will sign his contract, he'll just have proved more than both of those players, just because he had more opportunity up until that point. So I think it will be a little bit more, but yeah, totally agreed. I mean, if they get Danis on one of those deals, that would be awesome for the Pistons. But I think it would probably cost a little bit more at least.
Yeah, and I would assume that Danis knows that he's going to cost a little bit more because that's not that much more than the vet minimum, and right. He already essentially turned that down for 2 seasons this year and the next. So, yeah, I don't know about that one. But hey, it is what it is. Let's take a look here. We got a voicemail from our guy, a fella, asking a little question about Kevin Huerter.
Hey, this is a fella from the DBB comments. Question for you. So, Kevin Huerter's shooting percentage has gone down from Atlanta to now when he's on Detroit. Do you think that's partly because the other teams he was on weren't quite a fit for his skill set, whether it be schematically or the personnel they had? And 2, do you think what the Pistons run has the ability to be better for his skill set, so we can see him return to form? I don't know. Well, let me know. Can't wait to listen. See you guys.
All right, Blake. So to sum up, what went wrong for Kevin Huerter these past 3 seasons, and can the Pistons context fix it? What do you think?
I mean, the short answer is I think that playing next to Cade Cunningham is an extraordinary benefit to any player across the league, but especially any player of Kevin Huerter's ilk. Like we saw what it did for Malik Beasley, Duncan Robinson's having a great season. You can even extend it to Jalen Duren too. Just playing next to Cade Cunningham helps make any player better. Kevin Huerter won't be playing next to Cade Cunningham for every minute that he's on the floor. So I think a little bit, like if you look back at Kevin Huerter's stops, he hasn't played in over clunky offenses. Like he played next to Trae Young. You go to Sacramento and Fox was still there when he was there, and then he gets traded, and then Kevin Huerter goes to the Bulls, and I mean they have Josh Giddey and Kobe White, but I feel like Chicago was definitely a less fluid situation to the teams he played on before. And just in general, like going back to a team that is competing for the postseason and looking to make a run at the finals, I think that should bring some juice to any player and sort of revitalize from the situation that they were in, especially when it's that much worse. But it's definitely a worthy talking point because, like a fella said, Huerter's 3-point percentage has went down over all of his 3 stops. With the Hawks, he was just under 38%, Kings just under 37%, and then with the Bulls in total, he's shooting just above 34%. That's mainly just because of the start to this year. He's had shooting 31.4% from 3. So, I mean, I don't think he's in the stage of his career where he's necessarily going to just hit a downward spiral by any means. I still think he has a lot of good basketball left in him. And personally, I just think playing next to Cade will do wonders for no matter who it is across the league, but especially a player like Kevin Huerter.
Yeah, I mean, look, if you want reason for optimism, you already mentioned in Atlanta, he was playing next to Trae Young. Trae Young's one of the best playmakers in the league. His first section of his stint, right, his first year and a half was Sacramento, where he shoots the ball very well, 40% in year 1, and then I don't know the monthly breakdown, but 36% league average in year 2. You got to imagine that probably started to go down on the back half of the year after De'Aaron Fox gets traded, which is kind of where I'm going. De'Aaron Fox is a very good playmaker. In his first year in Sacramento, Kevin Huerter was a very good shooter. When he gets traded to the Bulls, Josh Giddey as well, one of the best playmakers in the league. He was on a heater to end last year, and there you go. Kevin Huerter shooting just under 38% on 7 attempts per game. So that's good, right? And if you want optimism, there it is. Now, Josh Giddey has been healthy in and out of the lineup, right? He's not just been out, but this season on 5 attempts a game, 31%. That's not great. So if you are a little skeptical, I'd say that that's maybe part of why. But yeah, I mean, like there's history to suggest that if you give Kevin Huerter a good playmaker, his shooting percentage goes up. And actually, if you dive into the synergy numbers, it does make sense a little bit. So shout out to Bryce Simon and his Motor City Hoop Substack for these. These were pulled from last year. So if you guys aren't reading that, make sure that you are. But from synergy, as just a spot up player, he only grades out his average. His all catch and shoot 3-point attempts, it's only 32%. But if they're unguarded, it's 38%. So he's a pretty good open 3-point shot shooter. Right. And if you could get him more of those looks, then you would imagine that 3-point percentage is going to go up. If you get him less, it's going to go down. How do you get more open 3-point looks? Play off of a really good playmaker. I'm not saying that this is like a guarantee, right? I'm skeptical. I have some reservations on Kevin Huerter's jump shot. I don't think there's a really great explanation for why it's been going down as precipitously as it has, especially for a player that has had the reputation and proven track record as a shooter like him. Like, this is very unusual. I can't think of another example of a player whose 3-point percentage has tanked like this when they've been so young. I'm not sure what's going on there, but if you're looking for reason for hope, I do think that it exists. It is possible that you're right. Like, hey, Cade Cunningham's going to get him a bunch of open looks, and then boom, that 3-point percentage shoots through the roof, and he looks like an amazing addition with all the other stuff he can do as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think just in general, it was clear that the Pistons wanted to address shooting over the deadline. You can certainly make the argument that, okay, Jaden Ivey has been a pretty good 3-point shooter since he's come back, and he was last year before he got hurt. But yeah, also there's like the stats Wes was bringing up at the top of the show of the additional things that Kevin Huerter can do on the floor as well. So again, Kevin Huerter isn't going to play all of his minutes next to Cade Cunningham because he's mainly going to be coming off the bench, and Cade isn't always going to be playing with the second unit. But when he is, I think that will only help. And I think like Duncan Robinson is always in there with the starting group and provides that gravity, off-ball movement that Cade really needs to thrive. And even if Kevin Huerter isn't playing next to Cade, like, he brings that element to the second unit. I know Karis LeVert can do those things as well, but he's had an up and down year. So more shooting compared to less always helps. So yeah, this season hasn't been great. I think it was a little bit of a weird situation with the Bulls and how much it is. So I'm optimistic about this change of scenery helping Kevin Huerter. Obviously, the first 2 games, like, we haven't got to see that much. He's only taken a few threes and hasn't made any. So we'll see how that changes over the next period of time. But I think it's a good pickup, especially because when you consider, I forget who brought it up in the chat, but it was Michael Dompierre, that he's on an expiring deal. He's here to help down the stretch, and in the postseason, maybe they'll retain him, maybe they won't, but it's like a low risk move to get you help that you need now.
Yeah. And like, I'll just add to that. It's such a low risk kind of maneuver from Langdon. Best case scenario, Huerter finds his jump shot, and he's a really valuable backup shooting guard for the Pistons when they go into the playoffs, right? Helps to solve that shooting issue. But if he's not, right? Like, just imagine that he's not in the rotation. Correct me if I'm wrong, Blake, but the Pistons were having the whole, like, shoot, we might need to play 12 guys because we've got so many good players. That was all before Jaden Ivey came back, wasn't it?
Yep.
Pretty sure it was,
yep.
Right? So this isn't addition by subtraction. That's not what I'm trying to say. But the Pistons have a lot of talent, and they have a lot of deep talent. All right. We were having these arguments like, man, how do you not get Paul Reed these minutes? How do you not get Dennis Jenkins these minutes when they were already playing a 10-man rotation early on in the year when Jaden Ivey's out? Well, Jaden Ivey's out now, right? He's not back. He's out in Chicago, and he's hopefully going to, like you said, find his footing over there and kind of resurrect his career. But from Detroit's perspective, if you're just subbing in Dennis Jenkins for Jaden Ivey in the rotation that we've been seeing the past few weeks, like, that's actually not bad, right? Dennis Jenkins is a very good three-point shooter. He's more of a point guard than Jaden Ivey is, so you can take the ball out of Karis LeVert's hand a little bit more. Like, I'm just saying, even if you don't factor in Kevin Huerter into this equation whatsoever, and I feel like you should, but even if you don't, right, it's not like the Pistons are noticeably or markedly worse. They're pretty much where they were, just with one less rotation player. And if Kevin Huerter can be a rotation player, then great, right? You just basically added one for free because Jaden Ivey wasn't in your future plans and his trade value was rather low, and you didn't want to deal with the qualifying offer stuff, and all that's more or less defensible. But, best case scenario, great, he fits. Worst case scenario, he's injury reserve just in case. And like Michael and Richard said, you just roll his salary into a Duren extension and you move on, and it's not the end of the world. So, and, of course, and you're getting a pick swap out of this too. So, I do think that it is a really, really low risk maneuver here from the Pistons. And hey, maybe it all works out. But on this note, actually, we got a really interesting message here from Gil Medina on Twitter at Medina1104. And, I'm summarizing because it was too long to really fit into this. But the core idea of what he sent was just that, are we as fans kind of looking at this trade deadline the wrong way? So much focus has been on Detroit needs to make a swing to make that next step, right, to truly be a contender and really go after the Eastern Conference this year. Well, what Gil brings up is, they're 5.5 games ahead of the Knicks right now. They're solidly ahead of the Boston Celtics. Is it not the case that those other teams are making moves to catch up to the Pistons this year? And then it shouldn't really be the other way around. Like, the Pistons are the class of the East. This is true, even if you look at tiebreaker information right now. The Pistons, I think, have tiebreakers over all of the top teams except for the Cavs at the moment. Like, they're dominating the East. Have we been looking at this backwards?
Well, I think just how this season has really changed things. If the Pistons are at 5th or 6th in the East and sort of competing, but there's something missing, you need to take that next step. Maybe you see them make a move like Utah made for Jaren Jackson. But I think I've just never got the sense from Trajan Langdon that he's super interested in giving up a ton of first round picks in he hasn't really had the opportunity to do that until this year, and he hasn't done that this year. So there's not much of a sample size to go off of on that. If there's a good deal in the future where that makes sense, maybe he'll go and do it. But I just think this team is sitting at the top of the Eastern Conference in a year where everyone below them, like, there are definitely some good teams, but all of them have had their struggles. The Pistons have too. We've talked about a ton what they can improve on as a team. But just in general, I think, and this was the Langdon, the message that Langdon said after the trade deadline is just not trying to rock the boat too much. You have a good thing going, so why try to throw a big monkey wrench into it in the middle of the season? If things go wrong in the playoffs, then maybe you can reassess over the offseason and you have some decisions to make at that point anyway. And yeah, I think we definitely saw some other teams in the East try to make moves to make jumps up the conference, most notably the Cavs bringing in James Harden in exchange for Darius Garland. But there's also Boston, who went and acquired Nikola Vucevic from the Bulls. And I think that was not a great move for the Pistons just because of how the team has struggled against him specifically in the past. And Boston's just a good team, and we'll see if Tatum comes back. But yeah, in general, like I just do not think the Pistons had to make that big swing this year. And I think if you did, like, say they wanted to go and try and get Lauri Markkanen, Utah's obviously not in that frame of thinking because we saw them try and get better and not actively worse at the deadline. But if you want Lauri Markkanen, like, you're going to have to include Jaden Ivey and at least one of Ausar Thompson or Ron Holland. And like, if I'm an opposing team, like, and the Pistons want to get a star from me, I am not, like, I'm asking about Jalen Duren at least. I know that Cade Cunningham is off limits, but like, I'd ask about Duren. There was, with everything with Giannis going on, there was obviously the chatter, like, could the Pistons get in the mix? Obviously Giannis is staying, but like, if the Pistons were seriously going to get in the mix for a player like that, if I was John Horst, the Bucks GM, I would ask for Jalen Duren. I just think if you're going to make a big move like that, you're going to have to give up probably multiple key players of this rotation. And it's like, why do that where you are in the standings right now? Again, if things go wrong over the rest of the way and in the playoffs, then you can reassess. But I think other teams basically had to catch up to the Pistons this year. And we saw that in how Trajan Langdon maneuvered at the deadline and not really rocking the boat too much.
Yeah, and like, so Sean Haddix and True Teller are bringing up a good point, I think, in the chat, right? It's about taking off pressure from Cade when you get to the playoffs. And, you know, to an extent, I do agree. Like, I have plenty of reservations about how this team is going to perform in the playoffs. You look at what is usually successful offensively in that playoff setting, and the Pistons have some glaring holes, right? They don't have a ton of ball handling outside of Cade Cunningham and Dennis Jenkins, and then they don't have a ton of shooting either. So what happens if Duncan Robinson has an off night? I get all of that. I really do. But it is a stretch, in my opinion, to go from they have some noticeable weaknesses that we're wondering about how they're going to fit in the playoff setting, and just assuming that because of those weaknesses, this team won't be successful in a playoff setting. This is the second best defense in the NBA. Defense travels. You know, you talk about all the things that happen in a playoff environment. Well, it gets harder to score the ball. And so I get that, you know, part of that is, well, okay, you know, the floor constraints and the Pistons are going to need shooters to make it easier for them. But at the same time, it's going to be even harder for the other team going up against now a playoff Pistons defense that has had, you know, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5, 6, 7 games to lock into your strategy and scheme specifically. Right? Like the Pistons have some advantages, is my point, when it comes to the playoffs too. You look at defense, you look at rebounding, you look at points in the paint, which tend to go up for teams when you get into the playoffs. The Pistons are dominating in all three of those categories. So I do, like, I understand the consternation. I do. I have some of the concerns myself, but when you're looking at things that could go wrong in the playoffs, I do think that we also need to look at what could go right in the playoffs. If the Pistons are this type of defense and they turn it up even more, okay, well, you know, it's a little bit of throwback ball, but there's no reason that's saying that can't work, right? It's one thing to say the Pistons are going to struggle to score, but all they need to do is struggle to score less than they make the other team struggle. And it's totally possible that that's kind of the run that we see. My point is, like, they still have a lot of unanswered questions. I think that was clear when Langdon was giving his kind of like post trade deadline presser. And the playoffs are where we're going to find all this out. Do they really need another big time scorer, or can Cade Cunningham and Jalen Duren, with the help of kind of the cast of characters that's on the roster, can they all lift the Pistons out of the first and second and maybe even Eastern Conference Finals? If that answer is no, okay, well then you go ahead and you revisit and you look at how you add something like that without taking away from the defense. And if the answer is yes, well then we've all been proven that we shouldn't have been so worried about it at all. Like, you know, you look at, it was Jaden Ivey a guarantee to be a fantastic scorer come playoff time? Absolutely not. There's so many unknowns in both directions. That's all I'm trying to say. And I get wanting to be more cautious with how dominant this team has been in the regular season. All right, the Knicks are the third best team in the Eastern Conference. Cade Cunningham, you want to say, oh, we got to take pressure off him. He played 22 minutes. No pressure on him. He was fine. Dennis Jenkins led the team in scoring, and they just BTA'd the Knicks. It remains to be seen. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, and I just think, like I said at the top of the show, I would have preferred Ayo Dosunmu over Kevin Huerter, but what did the Wolves give up for Dosunmu? They gave up Rob Dillingham. So,
and what if Dosunmu's shot comes back to earth? Like, this is an outlier season from him from 3 right now. What if that's a mirage? Now all of a sudden you've added a non-shooter.
Right. So, like, the point being is and Dosunmu's on an expiring contract as well. It's not a guarantee. Like, he's another player like Huerter who's there to help a contender down the stretch. So I think that's a big gamble. I mean, I like the move from the Wolves, but like, if the Pistons want to get up to that level, is Jaden Ivey going to get it done? Or are you willing to include Ron Holland in those conversations? I don't think so. So I think Kevin Huerter, while I think he can help the team and hopefully his shot bounces back and everything like that, I think you really just saw that strategy like Langdon talked about of preaching continuity and trying not to change too much of what's going on because you have a good thing going right now. And obviously we'll see what happens the rest of the season and the playoffs as well. But we've seen the depth pieces on this team step up when need be. Like last night against the Knicks, Cade gets in foul trouble. It ends up being a blowout and he doesn't have to play that much. So you have those players, and I know it can be up and down, and we still haven't really seen a ton of run from Huerter and get minutes load and everything like that, but we don't really know his role on the team yet. So we'll see how that shakes out. And overall, I'm just happy that they didn't take any swing really, and just kept things going because it's going well right now.
And last thing here before we get to another couple questions, but so Sean Haddock's saying like, yeah, just take pressure off of Cade, not asking for a big swing. I get it. I really do. But they've won 38 games this season. And in 38 games, 38 of those wins, I would venture to say there hasn't been too much pressure on Cade. There have been some of them, right? Some of them there have been, you really needed that Cade performance for sure. And I'm not, let's not take away from how amazing he's been. We got to take that for what it is. But like, if you're trying to balance, like, all right, was this a night where Cade was really overstressed versus not? Well, they're 38 wins and they have, was it 12 losses or 13 losses? Why am I blanking on this?
13.
Yeah, 13. All right, they're 38 and 13. There have been 38 good nights, 13 bad nights. Like, that's not a bad ratio by any means. That's pretty dang good. I'd say in terms of Cade's workload, 38 good, 13 bad. I think it just remains to be seen. We'll see. Sean could be absolutely right, and I'm with him. I'm a little bit worried about it when it comes to the playoffs too. So far, it hasn't been an issue. So I think it's fair to want to see it through. This would be the Ausar Thompson section. We've been talking about defense, right? Let's talk about some defense. So we got a great question from MC313. What are the odds of Ausar Thompson getting Defensive Player of the Year? Whatever they are, they should be higher. I think we're all going to agree there. And then we have another voicemail from our guy, a fella.
Y'all know who it is. I have a question. Is Ausar Thompson the best wing defender in the league? Because I'm in the middle of watching this man destroy the Knicks. It's glorious. So is he number one? Where does he rank? All right. Can't wait to listen. Y'all have a good one.
All right, Blake, you're gonna have to talk me off the ledge here. He has to be, right? I mean, wing defenders specifically, Defensive Player of the Year. I think that there's a bigger conversation to have there. But on the wing, because you can't even put Amen. You can't even put his brother into that. Amen's a guard.
Yeah. And
Ausar is guarding 1 through 4.
Yeah, so I just looked up the odds for Defensive Player of the Year on DraftKings Sportsbook. Victor Wembanyama is the favorite. I know his eligibility is going to come into question if he misses any more time. But after that, the next three are Chet Holmgren, Rudy Gobert, and Scotty Barnes. And then Ausar Thompson is next after that. So top five in terms of favorites. But Ausar Thompson is 60-1. So a long shot. And Gobert, for reference, is 9-1. Barnes is 40-1, and Holmgren is the favorite if you remove Wembanyama from the equation. So, I mean, yeah, like who else could you say in terms of better wing defenders, like OG Anunoby, Kason Wallace, like
Dyson Daniels some credit.
Dyson Daniels, yep. Lou Dort, players like that. But
I love Lou Dort, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think just how, like, the game against the Knicks was such a great example of this, how Ausar Thompson was able to eliminate a top scorer in the NBA from really doing anything. I don't think there are any. If there are, there's not many players on that level. There's some great defenders in this league, obviously, but I think Ausar is... and is like, he's able to take the top defensive assignment every night. And yeah, maybe like there'll be some off nights here and there, but for the great majority of it, he is going to compete at a high level and make that opponent's night fairly miserable. A lot of players are still able to score in this league, no matter who is defending them. But I think Ausar does a good job as any of eliminating that and minimizing it as much as possible, especially when he is taking oftentimes the team's best player and leading scorer.
All I'm going to say is when you take the alien out of the running here, because that's up on that's in the cards with the eligibility. I do think with the rest of the field, it's got to be the best, most impactful player on one of the best, most impactful defenses in the NBA. So I get Chet being there, but other than him, I think Isaiah Stewart's got to be in the conversation before Rudy Gobert. You know what I mean? Like, because you're looking at the Pistons, second best defense in the league. The best defender on the team is either Ausar Thompson or Isaiah Stewart. I think I'd probably argue it depends on the night you're watching the team, right? But one of those guys needs much more respect in this award conversation with the bettors, in my opinion. I mean, they just went back-to-back Eastern Conference Defensive Player of the Months, right? Stu, then Ausar Thompson. Everyone else will catch up, I think. But they are being underrated there. I'm right with... was that Mimsy313 that asked that question? I lost it. Well, hopefully it was. So shout out to the good question there from you and a fella. Let's get to kind of maybe a fun, maybe not. So we're into the buyout market now, right? And Kobina from the DBB comments is asking, why not Cam Thomas? Cam Thomas this year, 15.6 points per game, 1.8 rebounds, 3.1 assists. He's only averaging 0.3 stocks. He's shooting 40% from the floor, 32% from three, 32.5, and 84% from the free throw line in about 24 minutes a night.
So, I mean, I think the thing with Cam Thomas, obviously, with wherever he lands, is just going to be the offensive gravity that he wants to have, and also just his availability. Like, we've seen Trajan Langdon prioritize players that are available more often than not, which is not what the previous front office did. So it's nice to have that. But Cam Thomas has played in 24 games this year, 25 last year. I mean, I get the argument because, like, okay, Cam Thomas's last near full season in 23-24, he played 66 games and averaged 22.5 points a night. Like, there are not a lot of players around the league who can score at that level, but I also think there's a little bit of like a room, just like roster thing, because we're trying to figure out how to, what the moves are going to be to get Dennis Jenkins brought on. And like, yeah, you acquired Dario Saric from that trade. He hasn't played much at all. I don't think he's going to probably ever even like play a game as a Piston. So like that question is answered. But okay, if you want to sign Cam Thomas, who are you going to waive? Like Bobby Klintman is probably the leading candidate for that. Do you want to waive it? And like, what does Cam Johnson want in terms of money? You're not going to get that much on the buyout market, but the Pistons have just under 13 million a room before the first apron. So, I mean, I just don't think it's likely, especially when you consider that they're going to waive someone and sign Dennis Jenkins to a regular NBA deal. So, I mean, Cam Thomas is an interesting ad. I just don't see the fit in Detroit, honestly. But I get it because we've talked about wanting a second scorer, a guy who can take the pressure off of Cade, like we've been talking about. And Jalen Duren's done that a decent amount over the summer, but he needs Cade to play alongside him to help him score at a high level. And if you don't have either of them on the floor, where's your offense going to come from? We've seen it just be spread out fairly evenly. But adding Cam Thomas is a little bit of a non-continuity thing, which I just don't see Trajan Langdon doing right now. I would say it would be fun and probably like any year other than this one, just because I don't want it to throw things off when this team can really compete to go seriously far in the postseason.
Yeah, for sure. So we got a couple of guys in our live chat bringing up the defense. Like, yeah, Cam Thomas is a atrocious defender. He's real bad as a defender. And look, like the reputation of Cam Thomas is really built off of what he did 2 seasons ago. The reputation of Cam Thomas is not the player that he has been this year, right? Just look at those field goal, look at the percentages. 39.9% from the floor. Under 40% from the floor, 32.5% from three. He's supposed to be a sharpshooter. Like I get that it was a really bad situation in Brooklyn. I get that. And I would be, if the Pistons were not, like you said, if they were not in a position they are right now at the top of the Eastern Conference, I'd be more intrigued in taking a swing on putting him in a good spot and seeing if that's, really what was the issue there. If the Pistons were where they are right now, but like, let's say that they were really loaded up in the front court and they just needed guard help, I'd be down, right? Take a swing, take a look and see if you could get Cam Thomas in the door. But if you are looking at a guard who doesn't play any defense and has an effective field goal percentage of 46%, whose minutes are you giving him? Are you taking away to give him those, right? I know fans are really, really down on Karis LeVert right now, who, by the way, had a nice night there against the Knicks. But a couple days ago when I pulled this up, Karis LeVert's at 43% from the floor and 33% from the three-point line. He's got an effective field goal percentage of 51. Like, that's not good, but it's better. And he's actually a pretty good defender to boot, right? He's a much better defender. He's got more size and length than he uses as well. So, like, Cam Thomas 2 years ago, yes, I would have been very excited. I actually wrote an article back in the day for DBB that said, hey, like, if you're questioning Jaden Ivey, maybe you swap Jaden Ivey for Cam Thomas and like see if that could be that true second scorer that can play next to Cade over the next few years. But today's a different day. Today, that's a hard pass. They've got too many guards already that are taking up minutes, and I just, if that weren't true, it'd be an interesting gamble, but it is true, and the Pistons are too good for that sort of gamble anyway. So I wish him well somewhere else where he can average, 15 to 20 shots a game again, because apparently that's what he needs.
Yeah, he's going to need volume. I was just going to say he's going to need volume, and like he can probably get some volume here, but just not what he needs, and then that might make him unhappy. So I just think it's a bad situation coming in that the Pistons probably don't want any part of.
Sean Haddix with a good rule of thumb. Great players don't get waived. We can adjust that just slightly, right? Players that are truly going to be plug and play fits that solve a lot of issues for your team, those guys don't usually get waived. Some of them do if they're veterans, but it's pretty rare, especially when you're talking about a young player who just went through restricted free agency and had no interest, by the way, across the league. So, hey, yeah, that's right. Richard says the Bulls should look into him. I hear they're short on guards. They are. The Bulls, I know that I think they've got a roster full of like 10 or 11 guards right now, and maybe you say that they need to balance that out. But look, Chicago, their goal here at this deadline was to get 15. So they fell short as far as I can tell, and they need to add him to get him closer. Let's this is kind of fun. Just looking league wide, and we can kind of end on this one. All right, we did have a question here from DB Derek Brown, so we'll get this one in really quickly. Says he's not hating on Ron Holland, but is he really on Cade Cunningham's timeline? Ron Holland is years away, doesn't have a three-point shot right now, doesn't have half-court offense, and I don't see how him and Ausar and Duren can work together, and all that's fair. So quickly, Blake, is Ausar and Ron and Duren, right, and Cade, are all these guys really on the same timeline here?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at just Ron and Cade, like it's not the exact same timeline. And I think just across the league, like you want your core group to be on a similar timeline, but I just don't think there's ever a perfect timeline necessarily. So I think like Ron can work. Obviously, like Derek says, there's a lot more to go for him to be his fully realized potential, and we'll see what happens with how the contracts shake out with like Duren and Ausar, and then what happens with Ron the year following. I think he has, like, he's proven that he can make an impact on this team already. It's just how much would the team be willing to commit to that right now? The good thing is there's a year and a half and playoff basketball ahead to figure out and get a ton more data to make that decision. So I think just like the good news in general is I think the Pistons main group is all on the right timeline. It's never going to be perfect. But we've seen putting veterans next to Cade and Duren and Ausar, who, especially ones who can shoot and make up for the lack of shooting you get from Ausar and Duren, like, helps this team. And I see the front office continuing to do that, whether it's the players that are currently on this roster right now or not. So yeah, I totally get the concern here. I think there's like a long way to go for Ron, but I think he has time to prove it. So I'm not ready to like panic by any means or anything about that. It would stink if Ron goes elsewhere at some point or gets traded. But you can't pay everyone. Not saying Ron is necessarily going to be the odd man out, but he's in that group of guys who are going to want money eventually.
Yeah, just really quickly, I really think this is actually the fun thing about the Pistons right now. Because, like, is Ron Holland on the exact same timeline as Cade? No, not at all. Is Jalen Duren? No, also not at all. Jalen Duren's got a lot of improving left to do on his own right, and he's already an all-star this year. Is Ausar Thompson? No, right? We all hope that he can get better offensively and continue to find his niche there, right? Like, you go up and down this roster, if it's not a veteran player like a Tobias Harris or Javonte Green, look at Dennis Jenkins. Is Dennis Jenkins a finished product? Not even close, right? He's going to keep getting better too. So, like, I think you keep looking at all these young players, and none of them are on the timeline of Cade Cunningham. Cade Cunningham could go be the best player on a true championship contender right now, and I'm not saying that the Pistons aren't, but their young players don't really have that same feature, and yet here they are sitting at 38-13 at the top of the Eastern Conference and looking like a real threat to come out of the Eastern Conference. It's a fun tension, and it's part of what makes the story of this season so magical, really, right, and so surprising. Is that disconnect there, and the reason that it's been so successful is Duren a finished product? No. Has he stepped up and been the second star? Yeah, he did. Right? I mean, Ausar Thompson, we're talking about him. He should be Defensive Player of the Year conversation. Absolutely, right? But he's not a finished product either. So I think that it just kind of it makes it all the more fun to have this kind of situation here that Ron is very much a part of too. So I'm not too worried about it. Right now, I'm just trying to be a little bit of a prisoner of the moment and just enjoying the ride. Right. Let's end on this. All right. So we got a question from Epic Wayne and 57 Lion from our DBB comments asking about the rest of the Eastern Conference. So first from Epic Wayne, how do the moves or non-moves of the other teams in the Eastern Conference affect your expectations for this team in the playoffs, and what might some reasonable expectations be? And then a fun one here. This is from 57 Lion. I don't think that James Harden is a good fit for the Cavs. What say you?
Yeah, I mean, I think we can start with the Harden deal because that was the biggest one that impacts the Eastern Conference. I mean, you can take the Pacers getting Zubats. I think that will definitely impact things more next year and beyond. Like, that will be a scary team with Halliburton and Siakam. But with the Cavs and Harden, I understand why the Cavs made the deal. Darius Garland hasn't always been available. I mean, James Harden has had some injury history over his career, and obviously everything with getting unhappy in a bunch of different situations. I get why the Cavs made the move. It's a win now move. They went through a pretty awful stretch during the season, and Mobley has been hurt as well. They traded away DeAndre Hunter to move off of his money. So, I mean, I think going and getting James Harden when Donovan Mitchell is in the middle of a career year, just it definitely makes them better, not in the long run, but immediately. I think there's still things that you're going to figure out how they're going to work, because Mitchell averages like 28.5 points a game. Harden averages 24.5. That's a lot of shots that they're going to have to figure out how to divvy up. But why I think it can work is because Harden has played with great players over his career, from Kevin Durant to Kawhi Leonard and everyone in between. And James Harden is still one of the best passers and playmakers in the league. And Donovan Mitchell, even though that's not what he's known for, isn't so bad himself. And then you couple like that backcourt duo with Jared Allen and Evan Mobley. Really interested to see how it's going to work with Mobley, and maybe how his offensive impact maybe dips a little bit because of most of the scoring coming from the backcourt. But overall, when those two are your last line of defense, like, it doesn't fully make up for it, but it helps with the defensive questions that you inherently bring with a fit of Harden and Mitchell.
Real quick on that, I actually have more concerns. Well, so I have concerns, the same ones that you brought up offensively with the Cavs. I share that 100%. I'd add a defensive concern as well. I actually really don't love Harden's defensive profile ability, like the type of defender that he is on this Cavs team. I think Darius Garland was a much better fit. And that's just because Harden, if you're historically, James Harden's saving grace on defense has been his ability to switch on to bigger guys. You can't post up James Harden. He's very difficult to move. If you're slower footed, he's got a really good shot of staying in front, and he does put in effort when he's getting isolated in that way if you're trying to really target him there. But the Cavs don't switch, because you can't switch Jared Allen out. And Evan Mobley's switchable, but oftentimes he just isn't getting pulled into the pick and roll because, well, we're going to target Jared Allen because he can't move as well. And I know that you can't switch, right? If you're the other team, you're looking at the Cavs. So if James Harden's not allowed to switch, you want to know what he's awful at: chasing ball handlers and shooters around the perimeter. Darius Garland, for all of his warts, was at least quick and did put forth effort on that end. So I think that that's actually a pretty significant downgrade for them. I don't know how that's going to shake out, and their defense has already been struggling. Plus, they did lose DeAndre Hunter, who I don't understand the Cav hate for him. He's been solid this year. Yeah, they got Keon Ellis back. Dennis Schroeder looked okay, but like Hunter was he's an okay defender. He's a great shooter though, with size. Let's talk about the rest of the East, though. I mean, probably the most notable other team might be the Celtics, right? I mean, is there anyone else that's really piquing your interest?
I mean, not in terms of like competing this year. Like, we can talk about whatever happened with the Wizards and the Bulls. And I do really think the Zubats deal is interesting for Indiana, but obviously not this year. I think Boston is the team that you can look for with that. I'm sorry, I forget who brought it up in the chat, but obviously Boston sends out Anthony Simons in that deal, who we know can.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up too, man, because like Anthony Simons quietly has been having an awesome year. He's averaging 14 points per game in only 25 minutes, and he's shooting 40% from three on almost 7 attempts per game. Like Anthony Simons, for all the greatness that Nikola Vucevic brings, Simons is a big loss. Big loss.
Yeah, I agree, definitely. I think the question with whether and when Tatum is going to come back is the answer to that, because I think I understand why Boston made the move. Like, front court depth, Keita has been good at times, but he's also struggled at times. And I mean, you can say the same thing for Luka Garza, but I think getting a veteran center who can shoot the ball, like, it's similar to what they tried to do with Porzingis. Obviously, Vucevic isn't as long or as good as a rim protector, but bigs who can shoot are hard to come by. So I think it'll help them offensively, and I think the swing for them really is like when and if Tatum comes back this year. Because I totally agree, losing Simons and his scoring ability is a big loss that goes a little understated in that deal.
And I do really think Keita has been a huge impact for them defensively around the rim. He's tough to score against if you're funneling things towards him. And I think that he's had a pretty big role in the quality defense that the Celtics have played, especially against Detroit. You have no fear for Nikola Vucevic as a defender in any coverage. You don't care about him as a help defender. You don't care about him in drop. Not to light the guy up or anything. I really like him as a player. I think he's a great offensive player. He's an underrated passer. He brings a lot to them offensively. But he also is going to take a lot away from what they did defensively. And that's not nothing either, I guess, was how I'd put that.
Yeah, totally agree. I mean, I think Keita will still be in the lineup, but it definitely takes away from his role with the team. I mean, just in general with their front court depth, I think it makes sense, and we'll see how it goes. And hey, maybe they're confident that Tatum is going to be ready. I mean, we've all seen the workout videos and stuff. So we'll see what happens with that. Like, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't worried about Vucevic lighting up the Pistons a little bit in the playoffs, but hopefully the Pistons can make up for that on the offensive end, like you mentioned.
All right, Blake, let's end right here. Last final thought. All right. Who won the deadline to you? Did anyone, I mean, it doesn't mean anything.
Just like one team, or just like one
team.
Play.
Who did the best for themselves at this deadline?
Oh man,
Can I vote for the Clippers real quickly?
Yeah, go ahead.
They get that package back for the Zubats deal, and I think that's a great fit for the Pacers. So I am worried about them next year, but like they did really well there for the Clippers, and Darius Garland's under contract longer. I don't think that the drop off from him to James Harden is really that much from their perspective. And they got second round pick.
And they got younger.
Like it. Yeah, they did.
And
they did.
I mean, I think the thing that I'll just say is if you don't understand what the Clippers were doing, maybe they're a team that is a little bit worried about some hammers coming down on them with everything that's going on. So it might make sense a little bit as well. So, but I thought the Clippers made the right move, and I was surprised that they dealt Zubats, but for the package that they got, I don't fault them at all, especially after dealing Harden. I think a winner for me, I'll go with a little understated one. I mean, I talked about it a lot before. I really like what the Wolves did with getting AO into their rotation. They needed backcourt depth. Yeah, and they send out Mike Conley. He ends up getting bought out and expected to return. So they gave up Rob Dillingham, and I liked him as a player. I think the fit in Minnesota just might not have been as great because he needs volume, and Minnesota's a team that's made the Western Conference Finals 2 years in a row, and they're trying to make that next step. So I think AO is like really a player who can help them this year. The West is going to be very tough to get out of, but I thought they made a good move to go ahead and try to put themselves in the best position and give Anthony Edwards a little bit of help there. I mean, I know you didn't ask about losers, but I'll say I feel like the one biggest loser is Ja Morant, because what is going on there? I don't know.
Me either. No, I don't know either. Also notable, neither of us said the Wizards won.
Yeah, that is true.
There.
And Anthony Davis.
I did think about saying Dallas because they got something for Anthony Davis. Pretty nice. Yeah. Good for them.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have been the one. I wouldn't have wanted to be the team to pay that. But hey, okay.
Yeah. And Michael brings up Sacramento. I think that's a good one too. They bring in DeAndre Hunter and send out the Keon Ellis Schroeder package, but you still have Sabonis and Levine and DeMar. And I really thought the Kings might have kickstarted a rebuild. You're getting the most value out of Sabonis there, but maybe that value is not very high. So yeah, who knows what's going on in Sacramento? We've said that for so many years for now.
Not even Sacramento knows. That's part of the entertainment value. They're making it up as they go along. They do the whole Dennis Schroeder thing. They give the Pistons that nice traded player exception, which now allows them to go and hopefully get a helpful player in Kevin Huerter Jr. or Kevin Huerter. I keep saying a junior on the end of that name. I don't know what's going on there. But you get a helpful player hopefully in Kevin Huerter. But then you immediately go and you get Russell Westbrook, who then takes minutes away from Dennis Schroeder. So you got to get rid of Dennis Schroeder, and then now we're older and hey, we got to figure out how to get younger on the wing. But Keon Ellis, they don't know. They're making it up as they go along. It's like someone that's never played 2K before, and they're just really trying to nail these trades.
At least they got out of Dennis Schroeder's deal in the first year. I was thinking that they were going to have a hard time with that, but you give up Keon Ellis alongside, and Schroeder's obviously going to help the Cavs too. So any
shout out Richard saying Atlanta getting off Kristaps Porzingis. Yup, that's a good one.
Yeah,
it's a weird situation for them, but I think that they did well for that.
Yeah, flyer on Kuminga too. I mean, I'm not confident it'll work out, at least in Atlanta, but not a bad flyer.
There's a weird duplication there with Kuminga's skill set and some of the other forwards and wings they have. I do like getting more minutes for Onyeka Okongwu, though. That's a win for them.
Oh, 100%. But cool. We'll wrap it there. Thanks everyone for joining on a Saturday afternoon on Super Bowl weekend. So we appreciate you all, especially DB and Camille for sending in those super chats. Really appreciate you guys, and very unnecessary, but we very much appreciate it. Reminder, anyone can call our voice line to ask a question and hear your voice on the show. The number for that is 313-355-2717. And special thanks to Sean Corp, the managing editor of Detroit Bad Boys, for supporting the show. And shout out to you guys for all the great questions and talking points tonight. We'll catch you next week, whether on your commute or live with us on YouTube. We can't wait to talk more Detroit basketball with you all.